Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a quick introduction to my next project. It's not going to be in the workshop, it's going to be in my back garden. I'm going to take the camera out there, talk about some of the projects that I've done recently in the garden and why I've done them. And then I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to show you what I plan on doing in the garden, and it's probably going to be a series of videos because it's going to take me a while because it's only me doing it. But let's go out in the garden and I'll show you around. Right, so we come out the back door and step onto some ground level decking, and the piece on the right you can see where the decking is actually missing was where I dug the trench to run my electrics to the shed. So you step out onto the ground level decking and you'll see there's a few, I won't call it a patio, but there was a few slabs that I laid down which used to lead to a bed with some shrubs in, which is where my shed's now built. And then here you can see there's a 2.4 by 2.4 meter raised deck area with a piece in the corner where we were going to plant some small plants and maybe put a water feature, but we never actually got round to doing that. And the decking itself was never really used because once you get a table and chairs on there, it weren't big enough, and if you were drinking you were at risk of actually sliding off the edge. Right, so this is the bottom of our garden, and we've now got a nice large decking area and a new wooden shed which we put in. This was probably about 3 years ago now, but I'll put some pictures up of how the garden used to look, and talk you through what I did and why. So our garden backs onto a school field, and the school field is surrounded by a high hedgerow full of brambles and thorns and everything, and it basically encroached on our garden by quite a way. And originally I had the garden fenced off, and you can see where the shed is now. We had a fence going across and the bottom end of the garden was completely cut off, but I decided I wanted to open the garden up, so I cleared it all, took the fence down, put a fence across the back once it was all cleared. And then because our old fence looked like a complete eyesore and was crooked and the posts were all wobbly, I had the job of removing all the concrete and redoing the fence. So that was the first job I tackled. Then it was a case of moving the shed down to the bottom. And then because there used to be a stream that runs along the back end of our garden, it drops down by about 2.5 to 3 foot. And although the photos don't really show how much it drops off, we decided the best way to level it out was to build a substantial decking frame and just lay a deck. So as you can see, I've built the frame. I used 6x6 posts dropped into the ground and concreted in, and then I filled the holes with gravel to allow proper drainage to hopefully prevent the posts from rotting. And then it can basically be decked out and the fence was painted. We got a new shed because the metal one just looked terrible and was rotten, and that kind of opened up the bottom end of our garden. And because our garden is self-facing, it now catches the sun until like early evening, and you can sit down there, and yeah, it's made such a difference. So this was the first bit of decking I actually done in this house, and probably the first bit of major DIY I ever done, and at the time I was quite proud of it. Although the raised decking area, this is 2.4 by 2.4 meters squared, weren't really big enough for a table and chairs, and if you were sat round drinking, you were at risk of kind of tipping off the edge. So it's never really been used. So the plan is to remove all of that, clear all the slabs up and that, rip the decking up, and I'm going to be building a lean-to on the back of the house, which comes out about 3 meters. So before I could start ripping the deck up, I needed to take a wire brush and just clean up all the screw heads, because bearing in mind this has been down for about 13 years, the screw heads were completely filled up with dirt and grime, and some of them you couldn't even see. So I used a wire brush just to clean the worst of the dirt off, and then I actually used a handheld screwdriver to loosen the screws, because I knew that if I used a combi drill straight away, there was a strong chance that I'd end up stripping all the screws, and that'd make my job more difficult. So basically took my time, went round all the screws I could and actually loosened them by hand, and then I could use my combi drill to take out as many screws as I could actually get out. Bearing in mind some were just spinning and some did actually strip, but once I'd got the majority of them out, I could then use the combi drill to remove them all from the decking and then start lifting the boards up. So I managed to remove at least 95% of the screws, which I was surprised about, because bearing in mind these have been in for 13 years, I expected a lot of them to break and be so badly corroded that I wouldn't be able to remove them. But I think I had one break, and those that were just spinning, I managed to lift up enough that I could use a normal claw hammer and just prise them out that way. So I lifted the first board up, and as you can see, straight away saw my first spider, and I think this is a false widow. I'm not sure if they bite or not, or whether it's poisonous, but I weren't going to take any chances, so I used a spade to pry the boards up and remove them, just to be on the safe side. And excuse the shaky camera, but I'm using my phone and I'm walking across the decking frame. So you can see that originally I had some posts which I concreted into the ground, and because this was raised and there was plenty of airflow underneath, the main structure of this part of the deck is actually really sound. But the posts, as you'll see in a minute, the posts are completely rotten, and most of them are so badly rotten that they weren't even attached anymore, and this was one of the main reasons why it was time to tackle it and update the garden. But you can see the main structure is actually still pretty sound. So the final job to do before I could actually lift the raised decking frame out of the way was to cut a few sections out where I'd actually nailed the top frame to the lower frame using some fairly heavy duty nails. So that needed cutting out, and then once that was done I could basically lift the decking out and remove it out of my way. So once it was completely detached from the posts and the frame below it, I could then lift it out the way. Now, I was going to try and lift it up in one complete piece, but realised that'd be too difficult and decided to take it easier on my back and cut it into two pieces. Now I can just lift it out my way, and although the frame was notched when I actually built these frames, the majority of these 6x2s are actually in really good order, so I might possibly keep these ones and use them for something else. I'm not 100% sure on that, but be a shame to throw them away, because like I say, apart from the fact that they've been notched out, they are in quite good order. Right, so that's the first part of the decking completely removed. Now I've got to repeat the process on the lower deck. Then once that's lifted up, I can start lifting the few patio slabs, and they're only laid on sand anyway, so they're going to be easy to lift up, and then I can start leveling the ground out a little bit. Right guys, that's going to do it for part one. If you want to follow my progress, then look out for part two in the near future. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel and want to follow along, then be sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon, and you'll be notified when I upload my next video. So until then, stay safe and you'll see me soon.